Today's discussion will be about reducing student loan burden. This is about education, and it'll be in two-part series. Hello and welcome back. This is your Andrew Yang policy series hosted by yours truly, Rashid Hill. It is a pleasure, as always, to bring you great information, intelligent information, solutions for our country, definitely for our people. Today I want to talk about a very serious topic. This one is going to be a little longer than the others. Not necessarily that long, but as far as the discussion around it, as far as what Andrew Yang has discussed on the debate stage, as well as in other formats when he has an opportunity to discuss different things. He's been asked about this a few times, and he has given a very clear way forward on how we can solve this issue. It is affecting so many people, and basically, one of the basic things that I want you to really understand about this particular topic is think about Andrew Yang as the entrepreneur as well as the one that had his not-for-profit organization, Venture for America. He actually was helping graduates find gainful entrepreneurship in the commercial sector. And so we know that Andrew talks the talk and walks the walk. And he's definitely the person that understands the math. Today's discussion will be about reducing student loan burden. This is about education, and it'll be in two-part series. What does Andrew Yang say about student loan burden? Andrew Yang says, I understand student debt. I owe tens of thousands for years after graduating. It's immoral how we have saddled so many of our young people with so many school loans, often for degrees that will not result in solid careers. It's even worse if you don't finish school. You still owe the money and you don't get the benefit of a degree. Too many of our young people have been sold false promises. We owe it to them to do all we can to reduce their burden and make it so that they will be able to move forward in gaining skills, building a career, and starting a family and pursuing their ambitions. The future of our society depends on their success. As president, Andrew Yang says he will see to it that the federal government does not make 1 cent from providing educational loans to its citizens. I will make sure, as the president, that students get the lowest possible interest rates and can refinance at those rates. I will explore a blanket partial reduction of outstanding student loans for recent graduates. Call it the bailout for the people. Indebted students deserve a bailout, much more than the banks did. I will ask schools to forgive in part or in whole the debts of those who do not graduate. I will support a program that allows graduates to pay a percent of income instead of a fixed amount. I will establish a commission to reduce or forgive the loans of students who were induced to pursue a degree under false pretenses. I will make it easier to discharge school debt in bankruptcy. I will establish a grant program that forgives student debt for those who work in rural areas or with underprivileged populations. Last, I will gladly close schools that are essentially diploma mills preying upon the hopes and dreams of the vulnerable among us. There will be accountability for every dollar that the public is spending on school loans. We owe it to the next generation to get this right. We have to stop screwing our young people and sticking them with the bill. That's my man, Andrew Yang. And if you don't know, you can always visit his website, yang2020.com, to get more information about the student loan and student forgiveness and the reducing student loan burden goals and proposals that he has listed there. What are the problems he's trying to solve? One, education debt has exploded in recent years to unsupportable levels. Two, millions of young Americans owe tens of thousands of dollars in debt. and face an uncertain financial future. Entire generations will have difficulty advancing professionally, starting families, buying homes and vehicles, and fueling the next level of economic growth due to high debt loads. 3. There is low accountability for educational institutions that benefit from public financing while providing graduates little in the way of real opportunities. And the fourth problem he wants to solve is that lenders have little incentive to work with those in debt since bankruptcy doesn't eliminate student loan debt. So, what are his goals for this particular proposal? 1. Reduce the burden on millions of young Americans for their education. 2. Improve efficacy of funds invested in education. 3. Increase accountability of educational institutions. I like the way that sounds. Now, I personally was in the military. I did go to college, junior college, before I went to the military, and I went after I got the GI Bill. So I didn't have a huge burden, and I did not have student loans, outstanding loans, after I graduated. And when I was going through my master's, I did that on my own as well. So I understand from hearing about it. I know that it's a heavy load, and how do I personally, am I affected by it? Yeah, absolutely. Because my daughter actually, I had to co-sign for her particular student loan, and the company, which I will not mention, but the company that administered the loan did get a bailout in the last few years from the government. So, yes, I support Andrew Yang, and this is just one additional reason why I do. Accountability at the top, and in our government, in our institutions that are taking advantage of the people. Because here it is, she's graduated. She's in a whole different program now, and I'm still paying off her student loan. So it's ridiculous. So anyway, Andrew Yang says, as president, this is what he'll do. 1. Immediately reduce the student loan payments for millions of Americans by ensuring that the American government does not profit 1 cent from its educational loan servicing, and that students get the same interest rates as the wealthiest bank. Any profit that the government does realize will go into reducing rates the following year until profit is zero. Explore a blanket partial reduction in the principal of school loans, especially for recent graduates with the largest debt levels. The bailout for the people and the forgiveness, the bailout for the people and the forgiveness for debt beyond a certain period after graduation. Wow, excuse me. 3. He will propose the 10 by 10 Student Loan Emancipation Act, a plan by which the federal government would buy student loan debt, negotiate a rate with the private lenders, and allow students to opt into a plan to repay it through pledging 10% of their salary per year for 10 years, after which the balance would be forgiven. I like that. We got to have some skin in the game. Ask the schools, and additionally, he will ask schools to forgive in part or in whole the debts of those who do not graduate. Makes sense. Initiate a program that allows graduates to pay percent of income instead of a fixed amount. Great. Also, establish a commission that will explore debt forgiveness or reduction for students who sought degrees under false pretenses. Now, anybody watching this, you have to think about what that entails and what type of influence were you under, as far as were you in high school? Did you change degrees because somebody said this is a better route? This is more career oriented. I mean, how did you come to terms with the degree you sought? And then let's say somebody says, hey, mechanical engineering is better than accounting. But what if you're really good at math, but you really don't like machines or trying to create and solve problems in that particular way? Well, you may not have had a good experience, and somebody led you down a path that was not for you, or you have a faulty career counselor that has given you bad information. So we have to prove that. But at the end of the day, at least there's provisions for you in this particular proposal. Additionally, change bankruptcy laws to make it easier to discharge educational debt. Next, Expand a program that forgives the debt of graduates who work in rural areas or with underprivileged populations. Next, close schools with high loan default rates and consistently low employment placement success. Now, that right there should be at the top of the list. If you're not consistently showing that you're helping to place the graduates of your college into productive employment, or even offering an entrepreneur opportunity, or organizations like Venture for America that helps entrepreneurs, then yes, they should close you down, shut you down. They should put you out of business, because that's what the whole idea of putting somebody through college, giving them opportunities to better their education so they can be more competitive. Or we will be victim to international students, international um, um, people, educated people, that's going to come in and take over where we should have been able to run this operation, this company, these country organizations in a very productive way. Additional, he says, police and prosecute all marketing representation of schools that might induce enrollment under false pretenses, just like we talked about previously. And he says, allow student loan debt to be discharged through bankruptcy, thus forcing lenders to work with students in good faith to find workable repayment plans. So I think that's a fair direction that Andrew Yang wants to go in reducing the student burden of loan indebtedness. Additionally, he wants to talk about, if you are going to college, then we need to control the cost of college. So in this part 2 here, let's talk about college tuition has exploded over the past several decades. For the baby boomer generation, a college student could hold down a summer job to pay a substantial portion of their tuition, if not the whole thing. Today, that student would be lucky to cover the cost of their books. With tuition increasing by as much as 440% over the past quarter century, too many students are being saddled with over $100,000 in student loan debt before they even start their adult lives. Shameful. Despite the astronomical endowments and high tuition costs that students are willing to bear, education hasn't become any better. Schools need to get back to their ideals, education in service of their students and their country. To do so, they need to get their tuition under control. So let's listen to Andrew Yang for a minute on this topic.
So what's making us miserable in terms of inflation? Housing, education, healthcare. Those are the 3 true sources of inflation.
Education, boy.
Yeah, education.
Housing.
Daycare, too.
Yeah, daycare has been but daycare is behind these other big 3. And unless, so education, we all know college has gotten like 2.5 times more expensive.
It's crazy.
It's nuts. I don't know if you all have kids like I do, but you look up and you're like, what's it going to cost? What?
Yeah, how is it even possible how could a regular hardworking American send their kid to college? Like, it's becoming unrealistic in some ways.
Yeah, and the returns on a college degree are getting shakier too, even as they're stacking up the cost.
You have a master's and be unemployed.
Yeah. So you put this money into our hands, everything that's truly dynamic and competitive will stay more or less the same in cost. And then we need separate plans to bring down housing inflation and education costs and healthcare costs. But I looked at the reasons why those things are getting more and more expensive. It's not because we have more money. It's because there's actually a lot of restriction on each of those markets. Like if college gets more expensive, you feel like you don't have a choice, and then the government gives you massive loans, and you're like, all right, I guess that's what we're doing now. So we're up to $1.6 trillion in student loan debt, which I'd forgive a huge chunk of because that stuff's just crushing people.
So, yes, Andrew Yang has a list of problems that he wants to solve with that, and we're going to get into that as well. So the first thing he says here, in his own words, he says, I have 2 kids, and I'm frightened of what college costs today. Most of the money is not going to the professors, it's going to the administrators. If it doesn't directly impact the student experience, universities should take a long look at the rein in their costs. It's likely that schools are not up to the task of bringing down their own budgets, and government will have to help them scale back and become more cost efficient. And you're probably right, Mr. Yang. So what is the problem? The problem he's trying to solve here. One, college tuition is too expensive, forcing students who want to attend to either give up or take out student loans in an amount that will saddle them with debt throughout their lives. Two, colleges have skewed incentives based on a ranking system to invest in the wrong things. Three, there are limited incentives for schools to be more cost efficient and student directed. Three, taxpayers are subsidizing the students at rich universities when those schools should be investing their own money in their students or domestic expansion. In the next one, great new schools rarely crop up despite demand for them. So here's what's interesting about this. As we know in the news today, we talk about college debt, we're talking about the type of schools, we're talking about tuition, we're talking about cost efficient and student directed schools. And then the cap is if your parents or if somebody in your family was with an organization, Fortune 500 company, Fortune 1000 company, and you're living a good life and you grow into that, then they're going to come back and say, hey, I need you to get into this particular school because the strategy is I, as the parent, know what it is out here in the real world. And when those companies will only select people that went to certain schools, they don't really care how much you know or how educated you are at that Division 3 or 4 school. They want to know that you went to this Ivy League school just so they will be able to select you and not really be concerned about your level of education if you really know what you're doing. And so this has become the culture. We know this because people have now high level, not necessarily in integrity, but as far as in media, in Hollywood, you have people that have the money, that have the influence, and they have the opportunity, and they create an experience that their kids never had in order to impress the colleges they want to put their kids in. And they thought they could get away with it. But when your kid is not smart enough to pass the entrance exam, then don't you believe at a point in time this will be found out? If it's not by the school itself, it will be by the students looking around saying, you're doing YouTube videos all day while I'm in class all day. You're doing YouTube videos and getting paid for them in your dorm room while I'm studying every night and barely passing the exams and trying to get extra credit by going to class, talking to my student leader or talking to my professor, but you're making money in your dorm room off of YouTube videos. Something is not right. And guess what? Something wasn't right. And people called it out. And today you see that these celebrities, their time has come. Their game has run its course. And now they're going to pay the price. So Andrew Yang has come up with a way to level the playing field. And I think we should pay attention. So he has talked about the problem with college tuition and these high costs. So let's see what Mr. Yang has talked about doing to help this situation. So here he says some of the goals for combating the high cost of tuition. First thing he says, control the cost of higher education. Second, prevent students from being saddled with lifelong student debt. 3, increase the options for students looking at higher education. And 4, get schools to focus on their ideals and invest their money in increasing the quality of education while decreasing the cost of said education for their students. So, real quick, one of the things that I noticed in a future video, based on his proposals and his policies, he talks about options, vocational options, versus just trying to get into college to get a piece of paper that says I went to college. If you have any type of understanding of the system, educational system, you know that the educational system is not designed to put you into a high-paying career. It's just designed to show that you have a consistent way of taking care of problems and coming to some type of solution. That being finishing your degree, and just having a level of consistency. And it gives you critical thinking and things like this. And later on, when you actually do your internship, if you have the ability or capability to do that, and then they see that you either have the ability to succeed or they move past you and you are one of the statistics that are walking around with a master's degree and not employed. And we have a video that speaks about some of that as well. So what does Andrew Yang say he wants to do as president about this high cost of college tuition? He says, as president, I will explore a gradual phase-in of a desired ratio of administrators to students of 1 to 30 as a condition of public funding, as opposed to the current 1 to 21. The ratio was 1 to 50 in the 1970s. Wow. If we can get back to that level, then college will be much cheaper. Next, work with the Department of Education to create an information database on all post-secondary education institutions, focusing on information such as average debt of graduating student, average debt discounting students who don't take out loans, average salary of a recent graduate, average salary of graduate after 10 years. Next, stipulate that any university that receives public funding cannot increase its costs by more than the rate of annual median wage growth for the year before. Stipulate that the president of any university that receives public funding must meet once per year with a group of alumni to discuss their job prospects. Next, amend or modify the U.S. News and World Report rankings and eliminate the ability of any university to compensate administrators with incentives tied to their rankings. Accountability seems to be coming into play. Next, require all universities with endowments of over $30 billion to contribute 1% of their total endowment each year. That would be $300 million per year to the founding and operations of a new university in Ohio until it becomes self-sustaining, at which point another community will be identified to do the same thing. And he mentions the Harvard creates a new university in Ohio tax as an example. Okay? Now you may have questions about that, and I've seen other videos that talk specifically about that. I think it's a great idea because I spent time in other countries, foreign countries, and while being there, and if they're developing and they want to raise the education standards for their people, because a lot of times a foreign country sends their kids to the U.S. and the U.K. and so on and so forth to get educated on, the developed world and how things how things are. And a lot of the teachers are from foreign countries anyway. So it's not that we're smarter than them in this country. It's just the fact that a lot of foreign teachers come to America and they teach because they can make more money and they can take care of their families and things like that back home. And so when these countries are developing and they want to raise their standards, instead of sending their kids away, then they bring the schools to them because they have the economics to do that. And so when he talks about universities with endowments of over $30 billion to contribute to creating a new operation, a new university in the U.S., just in another state, there's two things that happens. One, the opportunity to get a Harvard level education with that status behind it, you don't have to go to Massachusetts to do that. Wouldn't that be nice? Two, if you leave Texas to go to Harvard, you're going to pay out of state, out of resident to go to that college. But if you're living in the state, so if that college opens up a campus where you are, now you're in resident. And that is a night and day level of charges or fees that are charged by the university for your admission. So you can get that education. You can get that same quality that they provide at the main campus. Now that campus is closer to you. You don't have to pay exuberant cost, still paying a good penny, but you get what you pay for in this particular sense. And if that's something that you choose to do, at least you can do it at a better rate than you would if you had to go and pay out-of-state fees, admissions for taking that particular school up on that offer. The next thing he says he will do, revisit the tax-exempt status for schools that have more than enough money, excuse me, excuse me, that have more than enough money to fund their operations and are investing that money back into the students at that institution. Next thing he says is invest in and support schools that are innovating and growing. So Mr. Yang has come up with some very powerful solutions to some very real problems. Just like all of his other proposals that you hear about in speeches and on YouTube and around the nation, we know that Andrew Yang is hands down the most intelligent candidate to come up with these type of solutions that are about real issues, real problems that are facing our adults and kids today. I suggest that anybody interested in what Andrew Yang is saying, anybody interested in trying to fact check Andrew Yang, anybody that wants to understand what is going on in the U.S., what is going on at the presidential level and at the grassroots level, then take the time, do the research. This is just my part in the bigger picture. I am giving you exactly what is coming off of Andrew Yang's proposals on his website. And if there's some information that I've experienced and I can contribute, then I'm going to provide that. Because some people would rather, are they just busy, or they just prefer to listen to maybe somebody else talk about it instead of reading it. And that's okay. I'm committed to continuing this process until I can't do it anymore. I've been sick for a little bit, but this is a weekend, and this is my only time that I get to really express and deliver on what I started. And I support Andrew Yang, and I wish I could do something that would make people understand how powerful this time is. To have somebody with that caliber of integrity and values, you know, the color has zero to do with it. This guy is so impressive on an intellectual level, on a logical level, on an emotional level, on a passion level. He knows where this country needs to go. He's been there doing it for this country since he's been born. He is ready to take charge and help our world, you know, become better. And we are better together. And it's not left, it's not right, it's not Democrat, it's not Republican. It's forward. The country needs to go forward. It's all about Andrew Yang making it happen. So let's do this. I'm Rashid Hill, and I appreciate you taking the time. And thank you for staying with me. I know this has been about a 20-25 minute setting, but definitely take advantage of learning more about Andrew Yang and his proposals for policies when he becomes president of the United States. Andrew Yang is our best chance to win for our children, for our families. Please take note, because on my next video, I'm going to continue to talk about education, learning, and some of his proposals about alternative ways to gain some experiences and benefits so that you can be better, well-rounded, and be more valuable in the labor force in the U.S. here and as well around the world, if you like. So yeah, join me on my next video when I talk about HBSUs, historically black colleges and universities, and what Andrew Yang proposes to do to focus on and maybe repairing some damages that were done in previous administrations in the U.S. against and not allowing and encouraging and really supporting from a public or government perspective the historically black colleges and universities. So definitely tune in for that particular video that's coming up. And I hope you enjoy the series.